delighted to get a few minutes with Shayaan, who is a machine learning engineer at ficc.ai. Shayaan, thank you for taking the time to speak.
Thanks, Raj. Happy to be here.
All right, so let's start with a little bit of an introduction about yourself.
Yeah, as Raj mentioned, I'm currently working as a machine learning engineer at ficc.ai, and we are a startup of about 7 people that are trying to bring more efficiency in the financial bond markets. Specifically, we're trying to target the municipal market, and it would be pretty surprising for guys that municipal bonds are still traded on phone. So, and the prices are also decided by negotiations on phone. So, we are trying to bring standardization in it, and we're trying to use self-attention models to price bonds and predict the yield spreads. So that's what I'm working on right now. And prior to joining FIC, I was doing my master's at Columbia in financial engineering, and yeah, I met. Uh, it was a very good time, and I met the people at FIC, and I'm working here now. Yeah.
Awesome, that's great. And when did you graduate from Columbia University?
So yeah, I finished my master's in December of 2019. So it's been like a couple of 5 6 months since my graduation now.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the timing of beginning the job search. When you were in college, when you were pursuing a master's program, when did you start searching for job opportunities, full-time job opportunities in the US?
So in Colombia, the full-time job application starts on your very first day. So we have this 1 week period where we are grilled on interview processes and the process of applying and how should we approach people on various social media platforms to talk to them about our experiences and then try to build our network. So I would say that job search, even the full-time job search, began on the very first day that you enter university, right? It's a very tedious process. So yeah, it starts on the very first day.
Okay, so it started. So basically, was it something that the university told you that, hey, start searching for full-time opportunities the first day, or was it something that you did by yourself?
No, I think it was a combination of both. It was something that was drilled into us by the career cell at Columbia, and also you see all of your peers doing the same. So you I don't want to be left behind, so you start doing the same as well. And I think it was more of peer pressure than Columbia driving you. That everybody's like just looking for jobs. So yeah, you also get into the rat race in a sense.
Got it, got it. So now looking back, what would you have changed when it came to the timing of beginning your job search specifically? I mean, do you think
Uh,
you had enough
yeah.
time, or would you have started a little bit earlier, or you had a lot more time? You could have, you could have been okay starting a little later too.
No, I think that was the right decision to start on the very first day because so the especially like we start in fall and the hiring season, especially for the financial industry, is at its peak in September and October, and you start in September itself. So you have no choice. You have to start on the very first day if you want to get an internship at a bank or be a fintech startup, because the first round of internship hiring, which can also like lead to your full time, like have already started before you even start class. And then the second round of hiring happens in January and February. So you have to start as soon as you like go in, and I think that's the right decision. That yeah.
Got it. So how did you approach your job search? As you mentioned that you started searching for jobs since the first day. At least you started preparing for searching for jobs. What was the approach like?
So I'll be very honest. Like I didn't have a background in finance, and I had just graduated from my masters in India when I joined Columbia. So I didn't know how the job process works. So I was in the first couple of months, I was just doing whatever I saw other people doing in a sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's not the right approach. I should have taken some time out and seen my skill sets and then applied for roles which were specific to me,
Mhm.
rather than just like going out and spending all night applying for jobs wherever I could find. And so I would have like taken some time to understand my skill set and applied for that. And how I would go about it now would be look at my resume, like match all my job requirements on LinkedIn, and also apply it directly on LinkedIn, as well as follow up with people on who've posted the job. So like recruiters, as well as like some like people who are working on the same team, and yeah, and definitely talk to your peers where they're applying, and talk to the career office at the university. That would be my suggestion.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you kind of covered the two questions that I had. One was how did you approach your job search, and second was if you were to look back now, what would you have changed when it came to searching for jobs? So thanks for covering both. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about actually getting interviews from
Yeah.
the companies that you applied for, right? Uh, what did you do to actually get interviews for all the roles that are out there that you applied for? Was there anything specific or anything in particular that that you were doing to actually get that first interview round?
So I didn't get an interview round for a very long, like an interview call for a very long time. I think the first interview I got was at the end of October, and I was very disheartened by that. Why am I not getting the interview? And I think this would be very helpful for people who are just coming out of graduation in India. Like in a sense, they don't have any work experience. I was one of them, and most of the recruiters I did talk to were like, "Yeah, we see that you have the skills, but you don't have anything like a practical experience to show for it." So I would suggest applying for roles which hire freshers in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to increase the chances of getting an interview. And I think the first interview I got was through a professor. So definitely talk to your professors, and they would have a lot of connections. They would have friends working in the industry, and if they see that you're doing well in their course or you have the necessary skill sets, so they'll definitely pass your resume along to other people. Other ways I got interviews were through friends who were working in different places. So, like, I asked them to forward my resume, and they. Uh, so you have to understand that, like, if you just keep on applying on LinkedIn or any other website such as Indeed, the chances of you getting a call is pretty low. So you have to go out of the way and talk to the person who actually posted the job, or ask someone to put your resume in the system. So that gives you an extra bump in the system, and that increases the chances of getting an interview call back by a lot. And that was my personal experience, and that was a lot of experiences of my friends at Columbia as well. So yeah, my suggestion would be to apply and then follow up with the recruiter, or ask someone to bump up your resume in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it. Let's talk about how you actually prepared for the interviews that you got.
So I think it's very common in most of the app job applications now that you get a like coding test or a written test first, or like a couple of MCQs, right? So this preparation would be specific to my domain, financial engineering, because we have this handbook of a set of questions, and all of the banks and all of the people just pick their questions from there, and it's just a variation of certain types of these questions. So it's called the Green Book, and it's also called, there's another book called The Herd on the Street.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually started doing those questions before even I came to Columbia, because I had some time off in India, so, and I was just like, okay, let's prepare for these interviews. And apart from that, there were also a lot of coding tests. So practicing on HackerRank, on Lead Code, and once you clear that, you'll get an interview call. And for jobs which directly require you to talk to someone, if it's a screening round with the HR, so it would be more on the behavioral end. For that, like, it would be more on like certain situations at workplace. Like if this happens, so one of the most common question is like, what if you disagree with your boss? How would you handle that question?
Mm-hmm.
And or other common questions are like, how do you deal with pressure? Like, and what is more important, like quality or time of delivery? So these are some common questions that are asked in behavioral rounds, if that's the first round. And then apart from that, if it's a technical round, so that again depends. Like if you're a fresher, it's mostly asked on your courses, what you're studying. So since I was a fresher, so it was mostly on my courses, what I've been studying. So I was at that time in my first semester, we had a couple of stochastic calculus courses. So majorly the questions were based on that. But for people who have a certain background, let's say some of the interviews saw that I was working as a researcher before in Germany, so they were mostly drilling on that questions. What did you do how did you approach it, what were the results, what you could have done better, and stuff like that. So it depends on what type of interview is the first interview,
Mm-hmm.
and I would recommend everyone to do a little bit of research on who's taking your interview and what is his background, because that could tell you a lot on what type of questions he's going to ask. and and definitely ask your friends. Like if you and your friend got an interview for the same job, and he has his interview a day before you or a couple of days before you, it's very likely the same questions would be repeated to you. That happened to me a lot. So talk to your friends and see how their interview goes, and you'll also get a gist of how the interview process happens. Especially for big companies, the questions are very standard. They don't change. For smaller companies, it would be the interview would be much more personal. For like, but big companies, it would be very standard, and the questions would be same for everybody.
Got it. Phenomenal. So, if you were to look back now, would you have changed your approach when it came to preparing for interviews?
Oh, certainly, yes. Like I did a lot of I did not focus actually. I rephrase. I did not focus a lot on the behavioral aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and those interviews, we as engineers and technical people think that they are not important, but they are equally, if not more important than our technical interviews, and they can also be the make or break. And in the current trend, it's more important to see if you fit in the company well, and especially if you're applying for a smaller company, they want to see that would you be able to fit properly in a smaller team, and how would you behave in a smaller team compared to what your technical knowledge are. Like, so one of the interviews actually told me that we can teach you technical skills, but we can't teach you how to behave in a team. That's has already been ingrained in you. So I would have prepared a little bit more on the behavioral aspect, and about the technical aspects. I think just like practice makes perfect, especially for technical interviews. So practice a lot, talk to your friends, like quiz each other, stuff like that. And there are a lot of companies. What they have started doing is they start now, rather than giving you a coding test, what they give you is an actual task that they've been working on. Then they give you a couple of days to work on it. So for that, ask for help. Don't be like, yeah, I can do it on my own. Ask for help. Yeah, that would be my solution.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, let's pivot towards some company specific questions.
Yeah.
How did you come across your specific role of the
Mhm.
machine learning engineer at ficc.ai?
Okay, so it was actually a pretty interesting story. I already had a job before I joined ficc.ai, so I was working for a hedge fund in New York, and I got an internship there through one of my professors, and I was working there all summer and fall as well, and they already offered me a full-time role, which was supposed to start in January. But one of my friends who was interning at FIC at that time, they had an opening, and he asked me like, "Hey, I think you'll be good in this role. I think your skills match very well with the role." And I read about the role and I liked it, and I asked him to forward my resume out to the people, and they also liked my resume. So that's how I got my interview at FIC, and I found the people at FIC. So it was through a friend, and a recommendation again through a recommendation through a friend, and yeah, so that's how I found them.
Got it. So, you actually got to know about the role in the company through your friend, and
Yes,
you also got that interview because your friend reached out saying that, hey, you might be a good fit for this role. And
exactly,
that was like the internal connection that you had that landed you the interview at that role.
exactly, for sure.
Gotcha. So what was the interview process like?
So the interview process was actually very tedious. The interview process spanned over a month,
Wow.
and it was 6 interview rounds and a coding round. So my first round was with one of the co-founders, and that was just a technical round. He just asked me questions about basic machine learning questions and some of the projects I worked on. And since this was the pandemic time, so it was on Zoom. On Zoom, he also mentioned that he liked me, and then he wants me to meet in person. So he asked me for a coffee conversation, and that was a week later. So we met over coffee, and then he had more questions on my resume, and then he had questions about what I know about the municipal bond market and what I know about other bond markets and how calculations are done. And after that, he introduced me to his other co-founder who was in Seattle. So it was another technical interview with him. So it was more on the software engineering aspect of the role, like good coding practices, what all, and a couple of more software engineering questions and design principles. After that, they sent me a coding test. So that was done on something called Carrot, and it was a very different from the usual test that you're used to like giving on HackerRank. So it was the questions were asked by a person. So it was a shared screen, and the person was live on the call as well, and he was observing anything you do.
Mm-hmm.
And he lets you know the question, and then you have to code it out. And in between, while you're coding it out, he asks you a question on why you did and like what's the intuition behind you doing like the coding that way. There were three coding questions, and then once I cleared that, we had a behavioral round with the HR at the company, and then there was an external round by a behavioral psychologist, and he was more on the aspect of fitting into a small company, like how do you make a transition to working on a startup because you work in a big hedge fund, and so more like two behavioral rounds, three technical rounds, and a coding round. Yeah.
Phenomenal. And how
Yeah.
long after your last interview did you get the offer?
So after my last interview, they emailed me in the evening itself. So I gave the interview in the morning, and by evening they had the decision ready that they are going to extend me the offer. And I had the offer letter 2 days after my final interview.
Got it. Closing remarks. Any last piece of advice for any international student who might be listening to this and he or she coming from outside the US, studying here,
Mhm.
and looking for a full-time opportunity? Any last piece of advice from yourself?
I think uh, the best advice that I can give you is talk to people. Talk to your professors, talk to your friends, and talk to people in different fields, not only your department. So they will help you a lot. Don't be hesitant on asking help. Everybody here is trying to find a job and help others and try to get help from others as well. Look at me. Like, I got both my internship and a job through connections. Like, I got my internship through a professor, and I got my full-time job through a friend. So talk to people. Don't be hesitant. Don't be hesitant to especially like coming from outside US. Like, here, it's more based on if you know, like, communication is very important for getting a job here.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk to people, reach out to people on LinkedIn, reach out to people on Twitter. Like we think that events are a waste of time. We just here to study. It's not that. Go to company events, talk to people. Like, one of my friends got a job at BCG just because he attended a presentation at Columbia on like water sustainability that BCG is working on. He met the person there. He forwarded his resume, and he got an interview there. So the best advice, again, I would rate it is talk to as many people as you can.
Phenomenal. Shayaan, thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate all the insights that you